This is Eric Haskins, and you're listening to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City.
You're listening to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, where we explore the history and people of Troy, New York, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, John Salka. You're listening to Chapter 12, Episode 21. This is part 3 of our series looking back at Metallica's 1989 concert at RPI's Houston Fieldhouse. This time, we're joined by Eric Haskins, class of 1991, who worked security at the arena during his years as a student. Eric has an impeccable memory of the Metallica show and countless other concerts he saw while working security at the 6,500 capacity arena, including Slayer, Stevie Ray Vaughn, Living Colour, Joan Jett, Anthrax, LL Cool J, and many, many more. During our conversation, Eric shares some special memories of Load-In and the after show with fans meeting Metallica, along with other hilarious backstage interactions with some of the world's most famous artists and musicians. Eric also shares some special keepsakes he's collected over the years from his time working as event security. This interview was recorded last October at WRPI, the college's radio station where Eric, also known as DJ Toast, hosts the Grown Man Rap Show every Sunday night. As with previous episodes, you'll be hearing live audience recordings from the Metallica and Queensrÿche sets from that night in Troy, along with excerpts from other archival materials, including stories from the Times Union during the lead-up to the show. Okay, that's enough talking from me. Let's get to our conversation with Eric Haskins on Metallica's 1989 concert in the Collar City.
I came in as a freshman in the fall of 1987, 17-year-old freshman, big metalhead from high school. And at the time, there were a lot of shows at the RPI Fieldhouse. And so my freshman year, I lived in a dorm, Davison Hall, here in RPI campus right across from Troy High. There was an upperclassman on my floor who was in charge of student-run security at the Fieldhouse for concerts. So there were two types of security. There were grown men who worked the pit, so between like the stage and the barrier, right? A lot of guys, and they worked the Palace and they worked other shows. And then the rest of the security throughout the arena were students, and we were like orange T-shirts that said security, things like that. So my freshman year, this upperclassman, Stuart Stackoff, was in charge of security. So I became friends with him, and he said, hey, do you want to work security for these shows? And as a broke college student, it was $10 an hour in 1987 money, which was great, and started to work, shows at the RPI Fieldhouse. And this was way before the arena in Albany was opened, the Knickerbocker, Times Union, MVP, whatever you want to call it. So when bands came through the area, if they wanted to have a date within the Capital District, it was either RPI Fieldhouse in Troy or it was the Glen Falls Civic Center.
Right. Neither
one had great acoustics. Like, they're terrible, just because they're both hockey arenas. But yeah, my first show as a 17-year-old in October, I worked the Hooters one night. It was like a Fly 92 thing, and then the next night was Heart, and then just the show started piling in, and it was great. And I needed the money, so I would sign up for whatever shows came down the pipe. And because the guy who was in charge was a friend of mine, lived on my floor, you needed a small crew to work all day. So when the first bus showed up or the first truck showed up, you needed some security there. And then once it got closer to showtime, obviously you would need the full staff. So I would always ask, hey, listen, I need the money. So if the buses are rolling in at 2 o'clock, sure, I'll get there at 2 o'clock and then work all the way through the show until the end and make good money at $10 an hour. So by the time, and a lot of great shows hit the Fieldhouse, and by the time Metallica came in, which was March 15th, 1989, Metallica and Queensrÿche, I might have been working there for a couple of years. So, but still, I was only 19 years old. I just turned 19. 5'6", 135 pounds, working security at a Metallica show, and it was great. But same thing. I needed the money, so I said, "Yeah, sign me up to work, and I'll work buses," was what they call it. So you'd work from when they expected the first bus to arrive, all the way through. But yeah, big metalhead in high school, and I was supposed to see Metallica with Cliff Burton They were on tour opening for Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, in 86?
In 86, the Ultimate Sin Tour. And I grew up southeastern Massachusetts near Providence, Rhode Island. So me and my friends, we had tickets to see Metallica open for Ozzy in the spring of 86 at the Providence Civic Center. And Ozzy, quote unquote, postponed due to illness, which was, either drugs or alcohol or something to this day, and I'm mad at it. And then, so that got postponed 6 months. And by then Metallica was off the tour. They're off playing Europe on their own. And Queensrÿche was opening for Ozzy. And
I didn't know that. That was the flip-flop.
Replacement. Yeah. So Globe Play. So I didn't get a chance to see Metallica with Cliff because Ozzy was quote unquote sick. By the time it got postponed, Metallica's in Europe. I see Ozzy with Queensrÿche opening, and then 11 days later, Cliff dies. So I was like, son of a bitch. To this day, I blame Ozzy. I never got to see Metallica with Cliff because he was quote unquote sick and had to postpone that show. And then, but when Metallica came around with Jason Newsted, they played a small arena in Providence, like the Palace Theater, but it was in Providence. So I got to see him then, and I got to see him at the Monsters of Rock tour that had the Scorpions and Van Halen with Sammy. So by the time they came here, I'd seen Metallica a few times, but I'm still a huge fan. And some of my friends from RPI who also work security were big Metallica fans. But it was kind of a crapshoot. If you were going to work a show that you liked, maybe I'm going to get a crappy position as security. I'm not going to be able to see the show, right? Or I'm going to be working, somewhere in the arena that is going to be terrible. If they wanted to enjoy the show, people are like, all right, I don't want to work it. I want to buy a ticket. So some of my friends bought tickets, and I was like, well, I need the money.
Just to
enjoy the show. But I was like, listen, please let me work the buses. I need the money. And then my position as security, I was like a roamer. So I got to float around, which was awesome. It was like the ultimate, as a 19-year-old Metallica fan with a security shirt, walking around during the show. I could be down the floor. I could be on the side of the stage. I could be backstage and all of that. So anyway, I worked a lot of shows at the Fieldhouse, and this was before, Ticketmaster and Live Nation had a monopoly. So you had regional promoters like Keith Beckia owned Northeast Concerts. They did a lot of shows at the Fieldhouse. They did a lot of shows at the Palace, and they would bring these bands in. And kind of reminisce now, thinking about all the great shows that came, Iron Maiden, Stevie Ray Vaughn, Robert Plant with Joan Jett opening, Jimmy Page, just a lot of great shows hit the Fieldhouse. But the Metallica Queensrÿche one in 1989, I think they were both at the top of their game at that point,
What was it like on campus as a student to know that, or perhaps the vibe at the time, whenever there was a concert happening at the Fieldhouse, irrespective of you knowing that you were going to work security, what was that like? Because they don't do concerts really at the Fieldhouse anymore. Was there like a different atmosphere on campus?
It's hard to say. I mean, so when I was here, 87 to 91, I think maybe the student population demographic was a little bit different. But I mean, we're a bunch of nerds. I mean, we're math and science, engineering. I just happened to be I happened to be a smart kid that was into metal, right? And you could kind of tell, you spot another long-haired kid on campus and you'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? Just you kind of give each other that look, or I'm wearing a concert T-shirt. So I don't think there was much of a vibe really when a show like that came. Maybe, I just think back of some of those shows. I didn't really feel like there was anything crazy because it was almost like where the Fieldhouse is, being north of campus, on the north end of campus. It's not like it was right in the heart of campus. Then it would be a different. It would be a different story.
So for those who don't know, and perhaps people don't, but there's the main RPI campus, and then the Fieldhouse is up
Tibbetts and Burdett or something, whatever. I don't know, but it's up there near
it's removed. It's across from the hospital. Up there.
Right. But it's a much bigger complex. Now they have the new football stadium. Everything else is up there. Back then, when Metallica played there, the only thing that was up that way was the Fieldhouse. And then if you walked a little bit, there was like some softball fields, and then there was married student housing was up that way. So it was a little bit away from the rest of campus. Now it's completely developed into this whole sports area with the football stadiums there and a nice track and, a number of other fields that they've developed up there. But it's interesting because when Anthrax played in 91, they played with Public Enemy, Primus, and they played there. Anthrax came in and they started playing softball in one of the fields right next to us. So they were recruiting, security guy. Hey, we need some more players to round out, our 2 9-person softball teams. It's kind of funny.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I was doing some of my research on some of these other shows, because we've been working on multiple episodes simultaneously, I did come across photos of Anthrax, and I don't remember who else it was. It may have been the first time. Okay. It may have been the 89 Exodus Halloween. I think it was them playing softball somewhere, but the photos were I don't think the location was on them, or maybe they were doing that everywhere they went.
Yeah, no, it almost seemed as if, I know we're off topic. It almost seemed as if that was a routine for them. They'd show up. The roadies would take the softball bags off the bottom of the bus, and then they were going to, get the gloves and the bats, and they're going to go play softball. But so for the Metallica show, I got there early afternoon because they were expecting buses to roll in. Sometimes you had to be there before noon, but I was there relatively early, and it was quiet. And then trucks would show up, and they'd start loading out. The roadies would start loading out the gear. You'd have the local crew, and then you'd have the crew that traveled. And then the first bus to pull in. So if you're looking at the field house, we just go north, south, east, west. The stage was on the north side, so that end of where the goalie would be. So if you walk in, you're looking at, on that end. On the west side of the field house is where the buses would pull up. So Queensrÿche's bus pulled up, and they rolled in. And I was a Queensrÿche fan since the first EP, and chatting them up, they see a young 19-year-old security guard, and I looked like I was 15 at the time anyway, with long hair. So we start chatting it up, and got autographs from all those guys, and they started setting up their gear. I do not recall Metallica doing a sound check like with the actual band members. There was no Metallica bus that rolled up that I recall to the field house. The first time I saw members of Metallica, they came in. 2 limos rolled around the back of the field house. And if you go back there now, it's usually where there's like a pile of snow where the Zamboni dumps the ice. Sure. Right. So 2 limos pull up, and you had the 2 original guys, Lars and James, come out of one limo. And then you had the 2 quote unquote new guys, although Kirk had been there for many years. So Kirk and Jason Newsted come out of another limo. And I distinctly remember a guy with an old-fashioned, it was 89, right? A VHS camera a big one that would hold a full VHS, and he had a light, right? So he had a microphone with the foam on the end of it, and then he had a floodlight, and he was filming the guys coming, like every move, coming out of the limo from Metallica, coming into the arena, all of that.
We'll come back to this later in the episode.
And I swear there's a live concert video for Whom the Bell Tolls from Metallica, and it's concert footage. And I swear that there are some scenes that are from the RPI's Houston Fieldhouse, because when you look at that arena, there was no upper deck. So you just had the ice, and you had the
not the ice that night,
not for the ice of the concert, but where the ice would be. Sure. And they would put the pads down, and they would have folding chairs, and then you would have the permanent chairs on the side, but there was no upper level, and you could see a catwalk. And I swear, if you look closely, and I'm nerdy enough to do it, where I'll pause the video, or whatever, just to try to see if there's, footage from the RPI Fieldhouse in that concert. But I swear there is.
And it's funny you mention it. One, I'm really curious to know what happened to all of that, those VHS, that raw video.
Of course,
Elektra or whatever label they were on at the time. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Elektra, I think.
I'm sure it's sitting in some archive somewhere, in some vault, in wherever Metallica keeps their material. But also, that night was filmed, and some of that footage ended up on, I think it's like the Ultra Deluxe edition of And Justice for All. I think there's 1 or 2 songs from that show, from the Fieldhouse show, that's
audio.
No video.
Oh, really, too? Okay, because same thing. I get nerdy into this, and I was looking at, so that And Justice for All box set released in 2018.
That's it.
The audio of Master of Puppets and 1 supposedly are from Troy, but I'd love to see the video.
I think it's on YouTube. I think somebody ripped it, and I'm not advocating for people to pirate
right
audio or video. It is, if you Google it and look for it, Metallica RPI Fieldhouse, 89, It does come up. It's one of the videos there. I probably have the link. I can send it to you. And it's those two songs. It's One and Master of Puppets. Because the bootleg, obviously the reason why we're doing the episode is because somebody had a camcorder and filmed the whole show from the bleacher seats.
Okay.
And you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen clips of them. Yeah, I've not sat and watched the whole thing, but I would love to. And I remember the stage production was pretty involved back then, because you had like the Lady Justice or whatever you call it with the scales in the background. Lars's drums were raised up a bit. So yeah, I mean, I remember there always being, like, they would get all the security guys together and they would have a conversation. Okay, here are the backstage passes that are valid. It's a metal show, so we're expecting problems, like all that type of stuff. There was I don't recall a single problem at the Metallica show from a security standpoint.
Concerns about violence at the show were top of mind for RPI in the weeks leading up to Metallica's performance at the Fieldhouse, prompted by an incident at a prior Metallica gig in California where more than 1,000 chairs were ripped up and thrown around an arena by the band's rabid fans. More than 15 people were injured during the show. A February 21st, 1989 article in the Times-Union included an interview with RPI public safety officials about security preparations for the event. Here's an excerpt. Their reputation precedes them, Mark Del Vecchio, an RPI public safety official, said when asked about security preparations for the concert. We'll be increasing security coverage, but the details I just don't have at this time, Del Vecchio said, noting that campus officials will be meeting this week to develop a security strategy for the show. In fact, the paper also reached out to Sean McCormick, Metallica's tour publicist at their record label, Elektra. The direct quote is, "That's absurd," unquote, she said when asked about local concerns over the risks of violence at Metallica's Troy show. The Times-Union's Will Hughes later landed an interview with lead guitarist Kirk Hammett for a story that published just 3 days before the Color City concert. In the article entitled, "Metallica Fans, Mend Your Vandalizing Ways," Hammett delivered a message to fans about how vandalism to arenas and concert venues hurts not just the band, but the heavy metal genre as a whole. Quote, "It's been going on at a lot of the gigs. The kids get overzealous about the band and they feel they need to go out and, tear a urinal off the wall to be cool. But it's not cool at all. It's a bummer." Unquote. Ultimately, there were just 5 arrests that night in Troy, according to a subsequent Times-Union story, including charges for criminal trespassing, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest, a far cry from the widespread chaos that was predicted. You can access and read the full news stories using links in the episode notes. Let's get back to Eric.
Even years later, when I worked the Slayer show, and you were like, it's Slayer. Never any problems that I recall. But it's interesting when you talk about these recording, these bootlegs, because one of my jobs was to prevent people from recording, But I'm like, dude, I'm a fan. This guy's a fan. If we had cell phones back then, it would have been like, here's my number. Send me a copy of it when you're done. I'm going to let you film. But obviously, that was back in the day. But just you always had to try to look for, cameras and things like that. And bands were super uptight, or at least the production, like the tour manager, he would come in and kind of debrief security or brief security and say, keep an eye out for this, or we're trying to let any of these recordings get out. But, by then I was just enjoying the show and just walking to try to get different kind of balance between getting paid, and do my job, but enjoying seeing Metallica in Queensrÿche at the RPI Fieldhouse. It was great.
First time listener to the show? It's okay. We won't tell. Don't forget to check out past episodes of Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and everywhere podcasts are available. You can also explore our full archive at troystorypod.com. Back to Queensrÿche, because we had a long phone conversation, and we've been trying to get this recording for a while. And you obviously just mentioned that you were a fan of Queensrÿche. So they were touring on, was it Operation Mindcrime?
I think so, because I'm looking at the set list. Operation Mindcrime is in the set, as is Revolution Calling, which would have been off that album, I think. I'm a fan of the earlier stuff, right? So when they open up with Queen of the Reich, which is sort of a power metal, then that's great for me.
Here's Queensrÿche performing at the RPI Fieldhouse on March 15th, 1989. A link to video from their performance that night is available in the episode notes.
And this was way before Silent Lucidity, right? And so they did get, they had a couple of songs that were a little on the weirder side, a little more progressive that I wasn't really into. And the same thing with Metallica. Like if you look at the Metallica set list, like this is a dream for anybody who loves their first 4 albums.
It's hysterical,
Yeah.
I know, because when you look and you say, "Wow, it's all like their best stuff," but it's just because they only had 4 albums.
Right, that's exactly right. And their best 4 albums in my mind. So I saw Metallica this past summer with my 24-year-old son now at Gillette Stadium, and they're doing the 2 nights in a stadium where they're not repeating a song.
No repeat weekend, right?
So it's like, which one are we going to? So we picked the night with Pantera 2.0 opening for Metallica because I'm not going to both. And
Couldn't afford it.
No, yeah. Please God, let them play Seek and Destroy. You know what I mean? Like let tonight be the night of the 2. And it was. So the Friday night was Seek and Destroy, and I think they did Battery. So it was like 2 out of my top 3, on if they would have done For Whom the Bell Tolls, then it would have been even
That's one of my number ones.
Yeah,
That's one of my
would have
number
been
ones
even better. But so yeah, that's why. So take a look again of the For Whom the Bell Tolls live video. Sometimes it's on MTV Classic. They have I'll see it every now and then. But I swear some of that inside footage is from Houston Fieldhouse. But the other thing, so there was a guy with a cam, like a VHS
shoulder mounted.
Yeah, and he was obviously with the band. So and he was filming everything, and this was their first headline tour, of the U.S. Because they had opened, they had done club shows, they had done, they played Scotia way back when, but this was the kind of big first arena tour that they had, and now they had someone opening for them. It was a pretty big deal. So I imagine they were filming. They were pretty much filming everything for a tour at that level. And then, their fans were ravenous. So anything, the VHS, the Cliff 'Em All video, all that stuff would come out. Yeah, it was a great show. I don't recall any issues. And then, so I worked from, like I said, I don't recall them doing a sound check. I think what they did was the bus went to a hotel.
Sure.
And then the crew did the sound check.
Mm-hmm.
And then they rolled up in the limos right before the show. And without any buses there from the hotel, and then they did the same thing when they departed. Queensrÿche wasn't at that level, so they had the bus and the crew and everything else. But the one thing that did strike me was I worked. So once the show's over and the people have cleared out, then most of the security gets to go home. But like I said, I'm trying to make the most money as possible, so I'm there from the moment the first bus leaves until the after show. And this is way before bands paid for VIP. Like you could pay, VIP treatment for anything now. You can go, you can get
meet and greet.
Meet and greet, a stage used guitar signed by Joe Perry. All that stuff. Anything's for sale now, but this is before that. And they had people with an after show pass. We'd go to section 3 of the Fieldhouse, and they would meet there, and then security would take them up. And when I say take them up, the Fieldhouse is kind of cramped, like the offices and stuff. It's a hockey arena. That's what it's built for. And so you walk up these stairs, and then there was this room upstairs in the Fieldhouse off to the side that I don't know if you ever see a house that had a pitched roof, so you had a bedroom with the ceiling was kind of so it's the same type of thing. We're in this room, the ceiling's at an angle, there's pipes, for plumbing and stuff that you could see. And this is now Metallica's in there to meet these fans that have these after show things. So on my way there, I ripped the dressing room sign off of the door of Metallica's dressing room. Bold move for, a kid who wants to keep his $10 an hour job. But I'm like, all right, I'm taking this. And I had the band sign that in this after show thing. But what was amazing to me was it seemed like there were kids. So I'm 19. So the people who were younger than me, so they had to have been kids because this is my distinct memory, who, like, Kirk knew these kids, these local kids, and like Lars knew these kids by name, and they were having a conversation. And I distinctly remember Kirk having a conversation with this quote unquote kid about a comic book, whatever it was, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something at the time, which was, and so they obviously knew each other. I didn't know if they were, did they travel up? Were they Old Bridge, New Jersey, fans? Were they people they met when they played Scotia? Because I don't remember Metallica playing the area prior, except for when Kill 'Em All came out and they played in Scotia with Wasp and Armored Saint.
A quick editor's note here, Metallica did play the Glens Falls Civic Center in 1986, opening for Ozzy Osbourne on the original Sin tour. Back to Eric.
So that struck me as weird, because this is pre-internet, before social media. How did they have to maintain this relationship with kids that I assumed were local?
And probably pre a street team of
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah, and it was great. And it was just great to see, because to me, these guys were superstar. Like, Metallica was the biggest thing for me at the time. To see, these guys interacting with, just everyday kids. And it wasn't a paid, like nowadays I'm kind of jaded. Oh, it's a paid meet and greet. Everything's for Instagram, whatever, right? But this was pretty cool. It seemed to be like a real conversation. And then that was it. And then they're off, and that was, and the show was over, and the after show was over, and they just departed. But yeah, it was a great, I definitely want to check out the bootlegs. The set lists were amazing. And even then, I was more of a fan of the first three albums, right? Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master Puppets. But trying to get into the next album, and the set list was heavy, and they had come out with that Garage Days Revisited, right? So you had the Misfits covers, you had those types of things, and then they played a couple. Yeah, I think they played Last Caress in Troy, which would have been the Misfits cover. Yeah, the golden era of concerts at the RPI Fieldhouse. And then, like I said, the Knickerbocker Arena opened in Albany. I remember that happened in my senior year, because Van Halen with Sammy played there. And then shows stopped coming to the Fieldhouse at that regularity for a variety of reasons. Like I said, Live Nation was going to book them in arenas that they have a relationship with. Those regional promoters stopped doing it. Even the student concert board at RPI cut back on Fieldhouse shows. They booked a show with Living Colour. So Cult of Personality blew up, right?
Amazing.
Living Colour. So they booked Living Colour to play the Fieldhouse, and the student concert board lost their shirt. Completely lost their shirt. Financially. Yeah. So they would book a lot of shows at the Student Union, which was great. It's a smaller place.
Yep.
I saw a lot of great shows there.
I played at the Union one time many years ago.
Upstairs or downstairs?
Upstairs.
Okay. So
I think upstairs, yeah.
So there were two. So we used to book bands downstairs. I booked China White down there for a legendary 518 metal band. China White played down there. And then we would get like party bands like the Sharks, or just for more of a like a bar type atmosphere. And then upstairs, some great shows.
That's like the upstairs. I mean, it's a big room.
It's a big area. And you could have the lights. So there's a balcony all the way around. So it's like a square room.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you could have the light. They actually just had a show there. The students just booked a show there recently, because I follow it on social media. But God, there were a lot of great shows that played in that space as well. And then So the student concert board started focusing more on that, and then they do like one big show a year at the Fieldhouse, okay, for the kids, for the students. But I don't know, just with, like, even Glens Falls doesn't have as many shows, at the Glens Falls Civic Center. But I remember being a student, and you'd hear about so-and-so's going on tour, and I was like, oh, please God, let them play the Fieldhouse. Because not only was it a payday for me, but I want to see this band.
And at the end of the night, you walk back to your dorm.
And then walk back to my dorm, right? Oh, and so I'll tell you another story about the benefits of work and security, but then you find out, oh, they're playing to Glens Falls instead of Troy. You're like, son of a gun. Like, why didn't they play? They should play Troy instead of going to Glens Falls. And like I said, I've seen concerts there, and the sound is terrible. But as a hungry, broke college student, when the crowd would run out, would leave, I would raid the dressing rooms or whatever food was left. And I remember Sonic Youth opened for Neil Young, and they had cases of Heineken that went untouched in their dressing room. So it's like, to my roommate. He backed his Honda up. We're loading cases of Heineken in the back of the car that Sonic Youth didn't, the promoter already paid for this. And being in the dressing room, after and Stevie Ray Vaughn playing. And I thought he was on the bus and the bus had left. So I'm in Stevie Ray Vaughn's dressing room eating like what's ever left of like a, cold cut sub, like an 8-foot sub, right? And Stevie Ray Vaughan walks in the dressing room. And I had a look like, the cat that ate the canary, like, oh my God. And I said, listen, I'm sorry. I thought you had left. I was just trying to get some food here. And I don't remember the exact words, but he said that was fine. He was getting some fruit to take on the bus and go in and walk on a bus. And I said something probably stupid like, hey, great show, whatever you're going to say like that. And I asked him for a guitar pick, and he reached into his pocket and handed me a Stevie Ray Vaughan used guitar pick. I have it framed now, and it says Stevie Ray Vaughan on one side of the guitar pick, and then you could see where it's got digs into the pick where he had played this. And he left. And I was just, and back then I didn't, I was a fan, but I wasn't, a mega fan. I'm not a guitar player, but it was like, okay. And then, a year or so later, he dies in a helicopter crash. And I have now that guitar pick framed with, a backstage pass and everything from that show. It's amazing.
Here's a clip of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble performing at the RPI Fieldhouse in Troy, New York on November 12th, 1989. That is actually an amazing, totally random interaction.
Yeah. But stuff like that, when it's so, as a student, and you didn't know, okay, I don't want to lose the job, but I'm like, there's $400 worth of, food sitting here in the dressing room, and I'm a hungry college kid with no money, and we used to the booze. Take all whatever's left over if we could. We only did that a few times because it's hard to hide. You're walking out with a case of Heineken, and you see looking, there's a production manager or the promoter or something like that. But anyway, no, I didn't do any of that for Metallica because I worked the after show. But I distinctly remember there being kids that Kirk and James knew at a first name basis. There's a phone ringing in the background.
I know, I can hear that.
I thought I turned the volume down. Hold on, unless there's a phone in here. See, I told you. That's what it is. It's in that room over there. You want me to tell me?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's all. Yeah. He's going to turn the phone down in the control room that's next to the live room that we're in right now.
90-year-old grandmother with the phone on. I turned the one down in there thinking it was going to be fine, but it was
for edification, or if we decide to use any of this, what you were hearing in the background is a phone from one of the control rooms. I don't know if it's Control B.
Yeah, that would have been B.
So Control B, and this is Control A, right?
Yeah, I thought it was
we're in
C.
Oh, okay. So Control A maybe.
Remember how he said they moved them around to me? I don't know what this goes.
So I bring this up. So we're in the RPI live room. This is the performance
for the radio
space
station.
For the radio station at WRPI. We are on the RPI campus right now. We are probably, 3 or 4 blocks, a little bit less from the actual field house itself. And the reason why I bring this up is we were talking about the student union. I had performed there. So I played there with a couple of RPI then students, now alumni, Pete Casalini and Igor Stolarski. Igor is actually like a professional audio engineer.
Oh, wow.
And he had a band at the time called Control A, and it was, the name was Control A. And so we played the student union. I filled in actually for his bass player who got sick, and he called me up and said, I have a show tomorrow night. We're opening up for Anthony Ranieri from Bayside. Is that his name? The singer from Bayside? At the time, the band Bayside, the singer was doing like a solo tour, and they got picked to open the show. And he's like, my bass player got sick. Can you come in? We're playing tomorrow night. Can you come in and like learn a 7-song set? So I came in with bass and I learned the whole set. And then the next day we went and played the student union.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's some. I have video from it floating around. And I'd actually love to get Igor. I was actually going to reach out to him and see if he wanted to do the show too, because
there were a lot of great shows that they played there. I mean, because I think the room held maybe 500, so it was a decent sized room, so you would get some good shows. I remember the student board we had booked Melissa Etheridge off her first album to play there, and she went on Letterman, I think is what it was. I think that's the story. She had a TV appearance that took priority over the show, so it was she got booked on the TV show, and it was a last minute cancel. And then she went, she blew up, went through the roof popularity wise. But there were a lot of good shows you could see in a smaller area. And the other thing is, it gave students experience in doing sound and lights and stuff like that too, which was fun. But yeah, they don't do much more at the Fieldhouse. I wish they did, but I don't know why. I think for a variety, I mean, like I said, for a variety of reasons, it could be the Live Nation thing, no more local promoters. And if you're going to do I don't know what they hold, 4,000 maybe, 4 to 6,000 for a concert there.
Right. The economics work better at a larger place too.
Right. And you could curtain off the top of the arena in Albany, which they do now. I've seen shows there that are like half-house shows.
I saw Megadeth in Heaven and Hell with Dio, like the Black Sabbath Dio era, and I think it was Machine Head in 2007, and that was when they first had started curtaining off the top. It just makes the arena feel a little less empty, because they're not going to sell out.
Yeah, exactly. If you go up there, you can see, Dio comes out to a half-empty arena. It's not a good. Well, they used to curtain off the Fieldhouse too sometimes.
Like what you're hearing? Share the love and leave a review. According to the internet, we're told reviews are the most effective way to help suggest our podcast to other listeners. Oh, and please share this episode with your friends, family, or that special person in your life. They'll thank you for it, and we will be forever in your debt. Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City. Catch new episodes each month on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and everywhere pods are cast. I just wanted to loop back on the Metallica show because the show itself came just a few weeks after their Grammy performance on TV and subsequent loss to Jethro Tull,
who played the Fieldhouse twice.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
And so on the bootleg, because I've watched the show a few times now. I
didn't put that together.
It was right after. It was only a couple weeks after. If you look on the website, if you look on the Metallica website, their archive of concerts, if you just click back a couple, they have the Grammys performance listed, which was the same night that they lost.
And what did they perform at the Grammys, Jimmy?
One.
Oh, okay.
Because that was the song.
That was the thing. That was the video.
And that was their first single and the video and the whole thing.
Their first video they ever did, yeah.
Which is my favorite Metallica song.
Okay.
One is my favorite.
Yeah, it's epic.
It's just their best song.
What is it, like 7 minutes?
Give or take. Yeah. It's just a great song. In my opinion, it's James Hetfield's best lyrics he's ever written. They're just like visceral and really great, based on.
And it goes through changes too.
Yes, right.
You know what I mean?
It's very dynamic.
Yep.
But it's angular. It's the ups and the downs,
right.
And then the end obviously being very,
right.
very aggressive and explosive. And then the iconic, Kirk Hammett guitar solo. But during the bootleg, when he's introducing one of the songs, and I put it in the preview for this episode, James Hetfield kind of gives a little dig to Jethro Tull.
Oh, awesome.
He goes like, he's like, oh, that was a Jethro Tull song,
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
I was in Title I, if you didn't know, and that's my favorite Jethro Tull song.
Well, to this day, whenever somebody, a music critic or somebody, talks about the Grammys in a negative way, which is a lot to talk about, they mention that as an example. Like they've got their head up their ass. Like, you're going to do Jethro Tull over Metallica, or Motorhead's going to get nominated and it's going to be for a cover, not for what I mean. They don't know. They're so out of tune, but it's so interesting that at the end of the day, Metallica gets their revenge, of course, but. that is a prime example of how some of these awards just they don't know
Yeah.
they don't know the first thing about
the
about
folks
any of that
the
stuff.
folks and it was the first year too, so it was like metal. What is the,
okay.
That was
Yeah,
the
I forgot
it was
that.
the very first metal Grammy.
Let's be realistic, and I think the real win for us was being on the show and playing. That I think is what's gonna last in people's mind. And who won the award, I think, is gonna fade away a lot quicker.
That was the voice of Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich discussing how the band was reflecting on their Grammy loss in 1989. Remember that camera crew Eric mentioned earlier that was following the band that night? During our research for this episode, we stumbled upon raw interview footage with Metallica filmed for Japanese television, recorded the very same day as the Troy concert, March 15th, 1989. I've linked to it in the episode notes if you want to watch the full video. All 4 members of the band are interviewed, 3 in what appears to be a hotel room, and the 4th at the field house itself. I can't say for certain this was the same camera crew that Eric saw that night, but it's a strong possibility. Here's Lars again.
You have to remember that most of the people that vote in the Grammy Academy are people that are a lot older than both the fans and the people in the media and the people in the music business. There are people that are like retired, audio engineers and just, slightly older people that are maybe a little less in touch with what goes on at the moment. And you got to remember that when they look at the list and go, okay, Metallica, they go, who the hell is Metallica? And they go, oh, Jethro Tull. I remember Jethro Tull from, 20 years ago when I was young myself, and I better vote for them. So it was quite funny because there was an interview with the president of the Academy the day after, and he said that the only thing he was really embarrassed about was the heavy metal category, and he said that usually it takes the Academy a few years to really even understand what the hell the award is for and so forth. But he actually apologized in the LA Times. It was so funny. Yeah. He was very embarrassed.
The interviewer also asked Metallica frontman James Hetfield on his reaction to the Grammy loss.
They didn't know about what is heavy metal, right?
No, it's a real new category for them. Right. So they didn't really know what was really happening in the heavy metal, or they're older people, in Nashville, and they're producers, musicians, and older kind of people who haven't really latched onto the new kind of thing yet. So it's pretty typical, that they won. We were joking backstage, yeah, Jethro Tull, Woo!
Here's Jason Newsted, the band's bass player and newest member, on how the tour was going so far.
We're doing a lot of shows, I mean, we're doing 200 and some shows on this tour, right, within a year or something, and so we're really trying to keep ourselves together as far as, like the drinking and, getting in trouble and that kind of stuff. We're really trying to think positively because we want to be as good as we possibly can be. Everybody has it in their mind now that we have to go out there and do this. This is our big chance, This is our big headlining tour, and we have to show everybody what it's all about.
Newsted also recounted his parents' reaction to the band losing the Grammy Award.
Yeah. My mom and dad came out there, yeah. My dad, when we lost, he said that he booed louder than anybody, because it was a huge, when we first came on, it was louder than I ever expected. People, I thought it was going to be like, but it was like, we're going, what? And then after they announced that we lost, this huge booing came over the whole crowd. And the guys go, Joe, commercial. Freaking out, man, because I didn't want it to go over the TV, It was great. Yeah, and everybody knew. Everybody knew what was supposed to happen. And you could tell by the boos. Yeah, so.
Lead guitarist Kirk Hammett's interview was filmed at the Fieldhouse in what the interview states is backstage in the shower room. A white bathroom tile wall and a large pile of towels are visible behind Kirk in the video.
I expected someone like AC/DC to win or something like that. But when Jethro Tull won it, my jaw dropped. I went, huh? Couldn't believe it. It was a shock. I was amazed. Everyone in the entire building, I think, was surprised. My parents were there. My mother was there. Yeah, I brought her there so she can see her son on the Grammys. When they announced Jethro Tull, she was part of the people who started booing. Just kidding.
The metal Grammy is not hard rock metal. I don't believe is on the televised broadcast anymore. So there's the Grammys televised, and then there's like I think it might be the night before is all the other ones. Yeah.
What you get for like sound engineering and all that. But then they put these, well, that's what they did. Well, we'll go off topic there, but they did the same thing with hip hop. So for rap music, the first year they didn't televise it, and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince won. And then a subsequent year, Public Enemy was nominated, and they boycotted it. And that was the year Sinead O'Connor performed at the Grammys with the Public Enemy's logo painted on the side of her head.
My wife and I, we literally just watched the Sinead O'Connor documentary, and they talked about that. Yes, totally.
And to come around to her, and then there was the scene where she's performing, getting booed, and Chris Christopherson comes out and tells her, gives her some motivation. And he just passed away.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
No, it's just crazy. But it's interesting that he gave a little dig about Jethro Tull, because I don't remember. But I would say, having just seen Metallica this past summer, obviously I reminisce about, just play anything off the first 4 albums. You know what I mean? Like, and I know I'm a boomer, but I'm not, like, any of the more recent stuff. Like, it's hit or miss for me, right?
For sure.
But I will, and people complain about Lars's drumming, whatever. I understand that, but Metallica, I think, and I don't know them personally, but from what the stories I hear, they never forgot where they came from. So, like, when they went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, infamously, they flew hundreds of people out to Cleveland, put them up, had a pre-party, paid for their admission, which is like $10,000 a ticket or a table or whatever for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for people who fed them when they were, put them up in a house when they were like, all these people from the Old Bridge militia and Old Bridge in New Jersey who basically kept them alive when they were recording. They never forgot that, even as big as they are, and they're doing mega domes and 2 nights in a stadium and not repeating a song. Like I said, I could pick my dream set list and they won't play it, but I don't think they've ever gotten too big. But anyway, to think back about 1989 is a prime era.
And you have a very good memory of the show, because I've spoken to a couple different people, and we talked to Jason Bittner, famously known for his work in Shadows Fall.
Yeah, world-class drummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And locally, Stigmata and a number of other bands he's played. And he's also played with Overkill.
Oh, exactly.
He filled in with Anthrax. I mean, he is top-level, incredible
metal drummer, yeah.
But super nice, generously offered his time to speak with us about his memories of the show. And he was at that gig that night. He was home from Berkeley, and you're going to laugh. He thought the show sucked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, so he saw them.
Lars is drumming specifically?
He called
because he's a drummer?
he called out, he was a little critical of Lars, but he was also, he's friends with Lars. But he was saying specifically that night, he thought that when they played Massachusetts, I think it was the next week, in I don't remember
probably
where,
Worcester, Mass.
Maybe
yeah.
He said that was the superior.
Sure,
that was the superior show to him. Just another quick editor's note here. I misspoke during this portion of the interview. The show Jason Bittner attended after the Troy show was in Providence, Rhode Island, not Worcester, Massachusetts. He was home early for some reason and said, "Oh, this is great. I'll get a sneak preview of the show before the Massachusetts show that I have tickets for."
Oh, so he saw back-to-back, not back-to-back nights, but pretty close. Right. I probably was just fanboying out, like,
for sure.
Being, here they are. I can walk from my dorm, go to the show, and get paid to see it, and thinking it was an amazing show. When I think back 35 years, I don't have any negative thoughts about the show. But then again, you're talking about just a guy who's a fan versus, a Berklee College of Music world-class metal drummer, right? And and then he got to compare it to the next night. I wouldn't see Metallica again for many years after the Fieldhouse show. I know I saw them in downtown Albany. I can't remember when I saw them after 89. But
they did play on
the
Black Album tour. Did come to Albany because there's actually a very funny clip from, is it a year and a half? The DVD. It's the making of the Black Album.
Okay, right.
And then the subsequent tour.
Right.
And there's actually a clip in it of Lars in a limo the morning after the Albany show. And the reason why it's the Albany show is because he has a copy of the Albany Times-Union, and they just shit on the show. And
oh, that's great.
So he's reading a bit of the review out, and he's just like, "Oh, the Albany Times Union said, you know."
I thought maybe you said he drove by and you saw the egg in the background.
No,
you know what I mean?
no,
Something like that.
he's reading the review the next morning that was printed in the paper on the way to their like private jet to fly.
Right. Yeah, they go to Albany County Airport to get in there. Yeah,
he wasn't like taking it. He was just kind of like, you could see he was just kind of laughing.
And it would have been sold out. So so what does he care?
And today's friendly review, Albany. Metallica has made a career of cutting across the grain, but their non-conformist ways don't always work. Case in point was Friday night's unfocused, rambling concert at Knickerbocker Arena. Blah, blah, blah. The fierce energy of Friday night's fury beginning was dissipated by arena rock cliches they'd previously avoided, like playing arenas. Defying conventions, this is good, that places most hits late in the concert set. Metallica burst out with Enter the Sandman, the childhood nightmare number that kicks off Metallica.
Yeah, it's interesting that they got a video clip of them in Albany. But
if you have the DVD, dig it out.
Yeah, no, I've got them somewhere in a box. I'd have to dig all that up.
I was Albany last night. It was good. Yeah, it was real good. Kids were really loud. We got a really shitty review in the paper. It was perfect. Usually, all the best gigs always get the worst reviews. You know?
But like I said, there were I don't remember any problems. I worked the worst show ever. New Kids on the Block during their prime played the RPI Fieldhouse. I never wanted to punch a 12-year-old girl before, but they're all coming in with these huge teddy bears. Like, can you give this to Donnie? And they're crying, and I'm like, yeah, more problems with overbearing parents and 12-year-old girls at the New Kids on the Block show than Metallica at the Fieldhouse in '89. But yeah, I definitely think I'm going to have to look at the live concert footage of For Whom the Bell Tolls, because I do think there's bits and pieces from the Fieldhouse. I wish I could go into the Fieldhouse now and just see, but I think it's all been painted over, obviously, because it's been 35 years. But the way that the rafters, the catwalk is, and where you would have people for spotlights and things, it just looks a little unique over other arenas. There are some unique aspects of it that it would be pretty easy to pick out. Hey, this is a Fieldhouse show. But they did curtain off, like we talked about that. I think
the Slayer show '87. Jason Bittner specifically mentioned that they used to curtain off the shows, and I don't think it was the '91 Slayer show, but I think it was the '87 Slayer show.
Yeah, they curtained that off, and then I remember the only other I remember is Stryper played there. They curtained it off.
Oh God,
I know Stryper. And I'm but most of them were Full House shows. But for me as a student, I wish they were all metal and rock shows. But there were country acts that came through. I remember the Barbara Mandrell, Randy Travis, some of those shows. Like I said, there was a wrestling event that was live on TBS in 1989 with Ric Flair that was filmed there. But most of, as a metalhead and a rock fan, getting to see Robert Plant on a solo tour with Joan Jett opening, and even like Neil Young with early Social Distortion and Sonic Youth playing there. It was just a great show. Rat. Oh, this is before my time, but the Bon Jovi coming to the Fieldhouse in '86. It was either '86 or early '87 with Rat opening for them when Slippery When Wet hit, and that just the security guys had stories about. Just groupie galore fest in Troy. And here I was, I'm at RPI where it's a 10-to-1 male to female ratio. I'm like, where are they now? Like, where are all those girls now? They're definitely not coming to a Metallica show, But there was some funny stories about some great shows that came through the Fieldhouse. But I would put Metallica, of all the shows that I worked, and there were many, Rush, Iron Maiden, a lot of great shows, but just being that it was just the first 4 albums, no filler. There was probably a bass solo and a guitar solo and a drum solo. Like you're gonna get that, but just hard hitting. The crowd was into it, and I think, and like I said, I'm not a world-class musician like Jason. I think it was a great show, but maybe I'm looking through rose-colored lenses 35 years later, but it was a great time.
Well, you do have that permanent memorial of the show on YouTube, which you should go check out, because it actually is really
I've got
cool.
The dressing room sign from the dressing room.
Yeah, we'll have to take some pictures of those, because I want to post them.
Yeah, it was a good time.
It's funny. So I worked for the city of Troy for 7.5 years, give or take. And when the previous, I think it would have been 30-year anniversary for the RPI Metallica show was coming up, I was working for the mayor. I was in the mayor's office. I was like, we got to try and do something around this. And at the time, Metallica was playing they had a show in Albany. And I was like, we got to...
2019.
Whenever it was. Yeah. I was like, we got to try and...
Pre-COVID.
We got to try and get them here.
Right.
We can... Let's... The 30th is coming up. It'd be so cool.
I was at that show in Albany.
8 miles away.
Yep.
There's no way they can't jump in a car, even one of them, and drive here. I don't know.
And walk through the field house and reminisce.
And just do a proclamation, whatever, just to the city recognize the moment. And it was crickets. I tried every single angle I could think of. I emailed every email address I could find, the fan club, their press office, Elektra Records.
Oh, I thought you meant crickets from the mayor's office.
No. I was.
You meant crickets from Metallica.
No. I was in the mayor's office, and this was something that we all kind of signed. I was like, Mayor, I want to do this. He was like, Yeah, that sounds like a good. The mayor was not a Metallica fan.
Right.
He was,
Yeah, but he knew they were world class.
Yeah, for sure.
World famous. Yeah.
We were just thinking of something to draw attention to Troy and mark the moment. And like I said, I must have emailed. I was trying to find. I knew somebody worked for the city. One of my coworkers' daughters worked for a production company that may have made some of the sets for their tour, and they were still several rings. But I'm just trying to find an in, and I got
it's 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, I got one email back when I emailed the fan club, and they were like, email the Elektra, and which I had already done. So it was a real bummer because it would have been such a cool way to mark the moment.
And it would have been easy, right? Because you're not asking them to fly in. They're already in town.
They're already there.
Right.
8 miles away. They could have jumped on 787, literally driven up, gotten off downtown.
And it's so funny because Lars appears to me like the guy, he does all the press, right?
Yeah.
So Lars and Kirk are really the only ones that really do any of that. And that something he would have eaten that up.
Lars, if you're listening...
Yeah,
I invite you.
Missed it.
I invite you to come on the show. I would love to talk to you because I would love to talk about the show, especially because the whole show's recorded. It was a pretty significant moment in the band's career. Like you said, it was their first headlining tour. It was the first
headlining tour in an arena. They had headline theaters.
No, understood.
But to be at a full blown arena.
And they had a new album out.
First video. It was just whole nother chapter in their growth.
And it was just a week or two after the Grammys moment, which is it's one of those, like you said, everyone points to that as sort of a funny, hysterical,
on network TV.
On network TV.
Playing one.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's epic.
So for the
35-year anniversary, Lars, come on. Come back to Troy.
Come to the show. Fly in. We'll meet you at the airport.
We'll take you to Famous Lunch.
Yeah. and Snowman's closed, so we're not going to be able to get. We won't be able to get ice cream. So it was before Troy was Buffalo.
Okay.
Prior to Buffalo was Philadelphia.
Where did they play Philadelphia?
The Spectrum.
Okay.
It says.
Yeah. So that's the basketball hockey arena, right? I saw Aerosmith in the Black Crowes there in 1990.
Prior to that was Norfolk, Virginia, at the Scope Arena.
Right.
Landover, Maryland, at the Capitol Center. Prior to that was Uniondale at the Nassau County Veterans Memorial Coliseum, Long Island. Prior to that was Rochester, which when you think
Blue Cross Arena, whatever they called it then.
Yeah, and whatever the
routing,
the route of this tour was. It's just all over the place. So then Rochester Community War Memorial.
Okay.
Binghamton.
Yeah.
The Broome County Veterans Memorial Arena,
which is probably about the same size as the Fieldhouse.
Probably.
Here in Troy.
Pittsburgh, March 4th was Pittsburgh Civic Arena. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the Stabler Arena. And then East Rutherford, New Jersey at the Brendan Byrne Arena. That was March 1st. Savannah, Georgia, February 27th, the Savannah Civic Center. Again, all over the place.
Routing,
yeah, all over the place. Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was a big to-do.
Yeah, Fayetteville, Fayetteville, North Carolina. I know it was very shortly after because it is on here. And then L.A., Los Angeles, California, the Grammy Awards at the Shrine Auditorium, February 22nd, 1989.
So 3 weeks before they hit the Fieldhouse.
Right.
Wow.
Yep, televised loss to Jethro Tull.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
No, some great. Yeah, I'm just looking at the shows that I try to go back in time and look at the shows that I worked. Write them down. And just and when I look at all the shows that came to the Fieldhouse, I mean, you had Red Hot Chili Peppers with an early Pearl Jam opening in '91, which at the time didn't have the impact, but on paper that was pretty. To say that Pearl Jam played Troy, I'm not as big a fan of Pearl Jam as I am Metallica, but that would have been pretty big. I mean, the Doors played here in the 60s, but other than that, Metallica, at that time, and like I said, and even in Queensrÿche was cherry on top because this is before Silent Lucidity and they blew up. They were still pretty rocking. So it was a good 1-2 punch.
And that was their like sort of iconic, most well-known album, I think, Operation Mindcrime. When people, I think of
when the metal fans think of Metallica.
No, well, I mean Queensrÿche.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, before they got, like I said, Silent Lucidity, and then they tried to replicate that. But yeah, I thought it was great. Great show. But I would love to. I'd love to know what's in that video footage of the guy with the shoulder camera when they were walking through and they see some wide-eyed 19-year-old kid with a mullet with a bright yellow security shirt, like following the band wherever they went, because I was fanboying out, getting paid $10 an hour to fanboy out. It was pretty good. Good time.
Anything else?
I don't think I have what notes I had. I think that was it. The set list, Eye of the Beholder. That's probably the only one I wasn't a big fan of. But open up with Blackened, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Sanitarium, Harvester of Sorrow. Then you get into Eye of the Beholder, bass solo. I mean, no one needs to hear a Jason Newsted bass solo, but the rest of the band needs a break. Then you get Master of Puppets 1, Seek and Destroy, and Justice for All. Holy cow. And then the encore, Creeping Death, Fade to Black, phenomenal. Guitar solo, Battery, phenomenal. Then a second encore where they do Misfits cover, Last Caress, Diamond Head cover, Am I Evil, and then Whiplash to end the night. I mean, yeah.
Pretty good show.
Pretty good show for a 19-year-old metalhead. Absolutely. Good deal.
I'm very grateful to Eric for taking us along for this trip down memory lane. And to you, dear listeners, for joining us on this extended run of episodes looking back at this special moment in Troy's music history. We've posted some photos of Eric's signed posters, backstage passes, and other tour memorabilia from the Metallica show on our website. We also have a video on our YouTube page with Eric showing off these unique keepsakes from his experience that night at the Fieldhouse. You can see that and much more at troystorypod.com/Metallica. For our next episode, we're joined by Jamel Mosley, photographer, videographer, visual artist, DJ, entrepreneur, producer, and co-owner of Collective Effort, The Pickle, and Upstate Cold Brew. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and may Pod save Troy. Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, is hosted, written, edited, and produced by me, John Salka. Our theme music is by Stephen J. Goldman at Four Legs Records. Like what you heard? Please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City. This is incredibly helpful for getting others to find our show. Want to know more? Visit troystorypod.com to see upcoming episodes, guests, and bonus content. Thanks for listening. The views or opinions expressed by guests are their own and not of the host or Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City.